soon as this, I get a message from Dane, our social media guy, and he's like, hey, take a look at this. And it says your videos have been removed. So the two biggest Timcast IRL shows on YouTube were deleted, both today. 3 years after they aired, with retroactive policy enforcement that they claim were always in effect, but only now they decided to remove. A lot of people have said, Tim, go to Rumble. Tim, go to Rumble. Well, we're on Rumble. And then people ask us why the live show isn't on Rumble. The live show is the biggest driver of memberships at timcast.com, which is the only way we're able to do all of this. If we downsized and became like a digital over-the-air show where we just Skype people in and stuff like that, sure, that shaves off a ton of money from our budget, and we could make things a lot cheaper. But I think one of the things that makes the conversations on the show work better, and I've talked to a lot of people in the industry about it, and everyone agrees, is in-person conversations in real life. Well, I don't want to do that. That means right now, based on how much it costs to run this show, drivers, staff, hotels, etc., the amount of members we have is maintaining. The amount of memberships we have is at a decent amount where we make a little bit more every month than we spend on the show, which gives us the ability to invest in other projects. My concern when I talk to all these other big companies and they're like, we want Timcast IRL live here, here, or here, or otherwise, is that the clips don't drive a lot of memberships. The live show does, because once we wrap the live show, we say, hey, the show continues at timcast.com. Become a member to watch the members only uncensored. With that, we are maintaining a slight growth. We have a slight uptick, a little bit, in how many members we have, but we don't grow a whole lot. It's very slow and steady. And this means, based on the model we have, the show can continue. If we were to stop doing live on YouTube the way we are, divide it up to other platforms, we run the risk of deranking. We run the risk of losing a large portion of what funds the show, driving new members, and then we become a sinking ship. We would have to start firing staff, cutting corners, reducing investment in projects. Possible. We could do that. I'd prefer not to. So the conversations we've had with other big networks has been, can you cover the costs of how much we make through YouTube in ad revenue so that if we make this move and we lose money, we stay afloat for at least a certain amount of time? And typically the answers have been, I don't know, maybe. I don't know if we want to do that. And I say, okay, well then we're going to keep doing what we're doing on YouTube because the live show generates the memberships that make the show work. It's that simple. I'll let you guys in on another, I don't know if it's a secret or whatever.
Inside baseball.
Inside baseball. I'm a big fan of Rumble. I'm friends with Chris Pavlovsky. He's a great dude. We use Rumble infrastructure for timcast.com. We use Parallel Economy for our memberships. We are absolutely utilizing their infrastructure, and they make money from it. We make money from it because we want to build the parallel economy. But there is a reality. When Rumble launched and we split our clips from YouTube to Rumble, we lost probably 40% of the revenue we got from YouTube. Because as much as Rumble is great and we want Rumble to exist and we want to be on Rumble, we don't make ad revenue off those videos. So when a video normally got 80 to 100,000 on YouTube, we would make a couple $100. Now the video on YouTube gets 50, 60,000 and on Rumble gets 30. That means we lost all of that ad revenue. So we have to maintain memberships. We can't just shut down and switch to Rumble because then we'd have to start laying people off and shrinking the ship. Don't want to do that. We are currently having conversations with some other companies. Now that YouTube has made these moves, there is renewed interest in how we can make these changes. I don't want to say too much because business negotiations are ongoing, but there are some potentially big moves that may happen based on this.
I'm in this constant state where I'm not surprised, yet I still feel shock. And the most recent example of that is YouTube removing 2 episodes of Tim Pool's podcast. Tim Pool, if you don't know, if you're not familiar, most people on this channel probably are familiar with Tim Pool. I'm a big fan. He's a milquetoast, classic liberal skateboarder. And because he stayed true to his classic liberal positions, like a Naomi Wolf, Bill Maher, those types, and he stays up on the news, though, not like Bill Maher, because he stayed true to those principles, in this world where it's anti-populist versus populists, he falls in that populist realm more so than any other realm. So he's in there with the populist right, like Bannon Trump, and he's warmed up to them. He had Carrie Lake on the show 3 times, and that's put him in kind of the spotlight. YouTube removed 2 of his episodes from his podcast, which is very similar to a warning shot to the bow. This is no different than 2 ships out in sea back in the 17th century, and they're shooting cannons at each other. In this case, it's one direction. It's YouTube, and YouTube in partnership with the government. We should have First Amendment protections on these platforms. Here's what happened. YouTube removed 2 of the most popular episodes of Tim Pool's show, podcast, Timcast IRL. These are episodes that aired in 2021. I'd found out about Tim Pool right at the end of 2020, and these are some of the first episodes I remember watching of his show even, and iconic, classic episodes with Joe Rogan, Alex Jones, Michael Malice, and others. Just saying those names on YouTube, if you don't know, YouTube will do voice to text to every video they have on their platform, and they will analyze what names are said on it. They can decide where to rank, where to derank. They do all that stuff behind the scenes. Nobody knows what it is. And they work with the government. So we'll get to that. Despite the age of these episodes, that doesn't matter to them. That's why you saw Charlie Kirk. If you go to Charlie Kirk's YouTube channel, I believe he took everything down. He's Rumble. He's doing big stuff on Rumble. He has other funding, so he doesn't need to be funded by YouTube, by Rumble or YouTube. He's got big billion-dollar donors. But Tim Pool's just running an operation. It's him. That's why the Daily Wire stuff was important. People came into my mentions and were asking, why is the Daily Wire stuff important? Now that they removed 2 episodes of Tim Pool's podcast, they've now let him know you are persona non grata right now. This is an election season. You've got too many eyes on you. You've got too much focus on you. And now that would push him towards, I didn't finish listening to the show today, but it could push him towards Daddy Bucks, which is basically the Daily Wire. I don't know if that's where he's going to go. I know he's friendly with those guys. I am not a fan anymore. I was probably a fan. You saw me talk positively about the Daily Wire up until October 7th.
I immediately made some calls to top men, who I will not reveal.
That's why it's important. I don't know if Tim Pool's going that way or not, but when you've got financial pressures, you've got a lot of mouths to feed in your organization, you might go where the money is and take a position that you need to be up under there, just like I have to take positions or ignore positions to be up under the YouTube umbrella. This is the number one issue in our country. YouTube applied retroactive enforcement.
We will put the clips up and a week later delete them from the platform because that is the only thing we can do based on retroactive policy enforcement.
I wouldn't call it retroactive enforcement. We all know the rules. Tim knows the rules better than anyone. When you post something on YouTube, there is no statute of limitations. They've reserved the right to give you a strike, remove, or ban your channel for anything that you have up. And for me, I mean, what is it? Who cares about me? I'm small. But for me, it's a real high risk because I don't get views on these old videos, and they're still up there, and they could go strike, channel gone. And that's why Tim Pool was like, I got to know what's happening here because I got plenty of videos that are worse than those probably. I don't even know what the rules are. So now I have to delete everything. He's not doing that just yet from what I heard, but that's where he would have to go.
If that is not the case, then you have retroactively placed policy enforcement actions against us, which leaves me with no alternative but to delete every video off this channel. Otherwise, at any moment, we could be banned. And they said, no, I don't know. I can't tell you that. Okay, great. You can't. Well, I immediately made some calls to top men, who I will not reveal.
So now he's looking at the alternatives. I remember when Tim Pool launched the website, man, how good was that? The coffee brand, ahead of the game. Good, and monetize the website. That's not easy to do. I got a website. I'm not monetizing it. But I should be, but that's what you have to do. You have to find another path. The episodes discussed various topics like Kyle Rittenhouse trial and the border. They talked about the pandemic. YouTube is regulating very hard right now as we go into the election season. They're going to be going ham on this stuff. I think there was a release that came out that they're going to be going real hard on this stuff. But here's my take away from this. Google contracts with the government. Google has a dedicated division called Google Public Sector, which partners with various U.S. government agencies. This division provides a range of services, including cloud solutions, cybersecurity, and advanced technologies tailored to the needs of federal, state, and local governments. Specifically, Google Public Sector aids, wait for it, the U.S. military and national security. So now we're in election year with all this kind of stuff popping off overseas. And national security, and with secure and reliable cloud solutions, just like they're doing for the defense ministry, and also has engaged in contracts to modernize infrastructure and operations within government agencies. So they have contracts with the government. YouTube, it was allowed to become a monopoly because of the government. Are you buying that the government didn't know when the government approved Google buying YouTube in 2006. The acquisition was approved without immediate major concerns from regulatory bodies, including antitrust issues, possibly because YouTube was not seen as a direct competitor to Google's main search business at that time. That sounds asinine. Even at that time, everybody knew that. It's just a video search platform. That's all it is. Not a direct competitor. Of course, it's a direct competitor. It's a better competitor. It's a siloed to videos. And now what happens when you search on Google? They have a whole video tab. What do you get on the video tab? Of course, you get YouTube, because that's the company that Google owns. You see the domination with a hidden algorithm. So you don't get Rumble suing them. You don't get Rumble. You don't get all these other Twitches. You can get them, but not as much, not at the top of the rankings. So they approved, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, didn't have any problems with the Google acquisition of YouTube in 2006. So the government allowed YouTube to become a monopoly. The government is right now suing YouTube. And it's all that is to me is a threat to say, we control you. On January 24th, 2023, the U.S. Department of Justice, along with several state attorney generals, filed civil antitrust lawsuit against Google, which owns YouTube. So now the only reason they're allowed, that could be dropped at any second. The only reason YouTube is allowed to maintain a monopoly, they could be broken up at any time, is because of the U.S. government. YouTube employs, just like Twitter and all these other apps, they employ ex-government agents, ex-FBI, I did a whole piece on the ex of the country 7,000 miles away. Their version of the agencies, ex-employees work for Google directly. That's a conflict of interest. YouTube gets requests from the government to censor users. The censorship is out of control. The plaintiffs in the case, Missouri versus Biden, it includes 5 social media users, along with the states of Missouri and Louisiana. They argued that the Biden administration put public and private pressure on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and that amounted to government-directed censorship. That's a lot that we're going through with this conflict of interest here. So what's the takeaway from all that? Let's recap that real quick. Government contracts, Google contracts with the government. YouTube was allowed to become a monopoly because of the government. YouTube is only allowed to maintain a monopoly because of the government. YouTube employs ex-government agents. YouTube sets X in quotes. YouTube gets requests from the government to censor users. This is a conflict of interest. That means we should have First Amendment protection on these platforms. It is the most important issue in our country. You don't get sidetracked on impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas. What a waste of time and stupidity that was. If you don't think that this is the number one issue in the country, and if you don't think we should have First Amendment protection on these platforms, you are a first-rate, unmitigated clown.
Middle MAGA.